You've given the same feedback 3 times and nothing has changed. The problem is not that your team doesn't hear you, it's that you're not giving feedback that actually changes the behavior. Today, we fix that. Welcome to Crossroads and Catalyst, the podcast with Shanita B. I am your host. This is where we discuss how a thoughtful, wise, and strategic perspective at a crossroads can be the catalyst for change. So, for today's executive brief, we're going to be focusing on the feedback skill that most leaders get wrong. So, we're going to spend the next 20 minutes on how to give feedback that sticks and changes behavior. The crossroads here is you've noticed some performance issues from a team member. Maybe they're missing some deadlines, they're not communicating very effectively or even quite poorly. And maybe leadership is not at all pleased and they feel as if this person is not meeting the expectations. So you know that you have to address it. You sit them down, you give them some feedback, and maybe that conversation goes a little bit like this. You need to be more proactive, or your communication could be better. They nod, they seem as though they understand, and maybe they even say thank you, and then nothing changes, at least from what you can tell. So you give them the feedback again and you remind them about the earlier conversations that you had. The problem now is that you're frustrated and they're confused, and the performance issue continues, and the team is now being impacted by this. And what I can tell you is that all of this is driven by a lack of awareness and accountability. And it's not just on the part of the team member, you play a role in this as well. And if you've listened to this show for any length of time, then you know that I beat the drum on awareness. And I was recently reading a book, and this book was not even in relation to leadership, but it had something that I think is very relevant. In this book, it says specifically behavior change becomes dramatic when we pass through the stages of awareness to conviction and reach the point where our consciences are changed. People have to be made aware, but in order for them to be made aware of something, someone has to address it to call it out to them. And this is where you step in. And this is why you're listening. So, for sure, you're in good company. And because part of what I'm here to do is to make you aware of things about which you may not be even aware. And I want to assist you with taking ownership of your career. So, feedback challenges that you're facing, I want you to share those with me. Okay, what other topics would you like to hear? So, I want you to click the link in the description for the Crossroads Spotlight because this is going to give us an opportunity to hear from one another so that you can provide some insight to me. And also be sure to follow the show and share it with another leader who might need to hear this. Because when you support me and give me feedback, it's going to help me to give you more relevant leadership strategies on a weekly basis. Jumping back in, who does this particular executive brief affect? Any leader who's given feedback that did not yield the intended results. Anyone who is avoiding giving feedback because it doesn't seem to work, or maybe you're just tired of having the same conversation repeatedly. So, the stakes in this particular instance, when your feedback doesn't change behavior, 3 things happen. The performance problem persists, your credibility erodes because your words don't have impact, and your team learns that feedback from you is just noise that they can ignore. It's no different than the white noise in the background. Nobody notices it. So, eventually, your good performers start wondering, why are you tolerating this bad behavior? So, let's get to the root issue. If your feedback isn't changing behavior, the problem is your feedback. I'm going to say that again. If your feedback isn't changing behavior, the problem is your feedback. It may not necessarily be that they have an unwillingness to change, and it might not even be their capability or competency. It's more than likely your delivery. Most feedback fails because it's vague, it's emotional, or it's focused on the person instead of the behavior. So I'm going to give you 5 or 6 things as to why most feedback fails. Mistake number one, you give feedback to a group rather than the individual. And I think we can all recognize this because we've all seen it play out. You either receive some group email or you're sitting in a team meeting and a specific behavior is announced as something to avoid, and rather than speaking directly to the person who is actually performing that behavior, and everybody generally knows who that is, you're saying it to the group as if that's going to matter and it's as if that's going to change anything. Well, all you did was give them an excuse not to change the behavior because it just went over their head and it didn't help anyone. So, mistake number two, you're too vague. When you say things like be more proactive, what does that actually mean? You have a specific thing that you have in mind, but because you haven't shared that and stated it, the other person is kind of left confused. And so, if they don't have uh, a specific example and they can't visualize it, they can't change it. They can't change the behavior. Mistake number three, you focus on character, not behavior. This would be something like this. You're not a team player versus you didn't share the project update. And so the reality of this is that it really appears as if you're attacking someone's character, and all that does is create defensiveness and they put a wall up. And so then the behavior that you want to address, it's really not getting addressed, nor is it getting changed. And the last time that I checked, only God knows the heart. So leave that to him. You just focus specifically on the behavior. Mistake number four, you give those compliment sandwiches. You know what I mean? When you give positive feedback and then you insert the negative and then you close it with a positive. All you did was send a confusing message because the last thing that they're left with is that everything is all good. And so you just pretty much covered up the actual behavior that you wanted to address, and so therefore nothing changes. Mistake number five: you don't even explain the impact. So it looks something like this: you don't even tell them what's wrong and why it matters. So if they don't understand the impact, they don't have any sense of urgency to change it. And part of what you want to do is create that sense of urgency for them. And then mistake number six, you don't follow up. So you give feedback once and then you hope for the best. Well, I can tell you that doesn't work very well. If you want the behavior to change, there has to be some level of accountability and reinforcement that goes along with the process. So here are some key points that you should look for. Number one, feedback that doesn't include specific examples is 80% less likely to change behavior. Number two, people need to hear feedback several times before it becomes actionable. And they might agree, but they might not necessarily know how to change it. So you might even have to step in and give them some assistance to help them figure out how to change it. And then number three, the best feedback focuses on observable behavior, not personality traits. So you want to focus on what they actually do or say. You don't want to get in and start talking about their attitude or particular traits. Just focus on the specifics in that regard. So here are some critical questions that you should ask yourself. Can the person visualize exactly what you want them to do differently? If they can't, it's not going to work. Number two, do they understand why changing this behavior matters? And then number three, have you followed up to see if change happened? Again, this is why I say it's not just awareness and accountability for the team member. This requires you to be aware and you to be accountable. So then what kind of choices do we have? Well, you have three approaches to giving feedback, and two of them are a complete waste of time. So option A, keep giving the vague feedback and hope that it changes. It's going to feel like it's less confrontational and it might even seem like it's easier. But the downside of this is that nothing changes. And what you find is that you're going to have to repeat yourself. And you certainly have lost all credibility because no one really puts any uh, credence into what you're telling them anyway. So, this is why the same issue keeps showing up on performance reviews. Option B, avoid feedback until their performance review. Well, it definitely gives you the ability to avoid uncomfortable conversations. But the downside for sure is that that problem, it continues on and it just compounds because none of these things take place in isolation. And not only that, you have robbed that person of an opportunity to improve their performance. And then what does that result in? Well, now they're resentful because you've been holding on to this information that could have potentially helped them earlier. And because of whatever, I'm going to call it an insecurity or fear, even whatever reason that you had for holding that back, well, they've lost out time on on improving, right? So if you wait until the annual review, it's too late. It's too late to go back and try to address something that might have happened 6 months ago, or I don't even as early as 30 days ago. But because it's been happening and you didn't address it, okay, that time is lost. Option C, give clear, behavioral, actionable feedback. This is what's actually going to drive the change that you're looking for. And it's also going to build up that accountability. And then what you want to see, what you should see is improved performance. Now, this definitely will require you to prepare, and it's going to also require that you be direct. And for those of you who are uncomfortable with being direct and calling things out, well, like I say, get uncomfortable being uncomfortable. Excuse me, get comfortable being uncomfortable because this is a part of your job. This is why you're in a leadership position, is to deal with things directly. Now, because you deal with them directly does not mean that you have to be harsh or mean. You're just dealing with the things that you see and you're calling them out and you're having a conversation about it. And this is the feedback approach that's actually going to work. It's just being very specific, being very direct. All right. So then what kind of a system or framework do we want to put in place to assist us with this feedback? Well, we're going to talk about SBI, situation, behavior, impact. So this is step one. The situation, you have to describe when and where. So please be very specific, give a recent example, and it has to be observable. So this would be something like you would say, when you submitted the project report last week, dot, 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 I noticed such and such. Or in yesterday's team meeting, lay out the scenario where you observe this thing happening. So, for the behavior aspect, describe what they did or said. Again, it has to be observable. We're not talking strictly about your interpretation of it. Leave that out for now. Just focus on the observation. And it would look something like this: you interrupted Sarah twice while she was presenting her report, dot, dot, dot. Or the report, I noticed that the report was missing uh, some information in the financial analysis section. You have to figure out what this looks like in your particular scenario. Impact, you want to explain the consequence. And basically, what that means is, why does it matter? So, when you left out this information in the report, it delayed our ability to make a decision because we didn't have that important information. So, I'm going to give you a couple of examples. One example of feedback that is vague, one example of feedback that is clear. Here's the vague one: you need to be more professional in meetings. Think about that. Has anyone given you feedback and you were just kind of wondering, well, what exactly do you mean by being professional? That now you have to start defining terms. Here's an example of clear feedback. In yesterday's meeting, you interrupted John 3 times while he was presenting. And what it did is it disrupted the flow of the meeting. And it also didn't give everyone the opportunity to hear the full presentation so that they could really formulate the questions that they might have had. Do you see the difference? I hope that you do. So consider this and figure out how you can incorporate this into your process. So, step two, you have to check for understanding. Do not assume that they understand what you said. Ask them questions. What is your understanding of what I just shared? Or how do you see the situation? Or do you think that I assessed it fairly or accurately? Do that, okay? It shows that you're open to understanding what really took place if, in fact, your assessment is incorrect. Step three, collaborate on solutions. Do not just tell them what to do. You want to engage them and be collaborative where applicable. Okay, so ask them a question such as, what would you do differently next time? Or what kind of support do you need from me in order to make this change? How can I assist you? You don't want to just put it on them and just turn away from it. Step four, set clear expectations and timelines. You want to be specific about what success looks like. Okay. So then you could say something like, going forward, this is what I anticipate seeing from you. And then describe whatever that new behavior is and let them know that you're going to check back in a couple of weeks to assess the progress. And be sure to document the conversation. Even if it's not something that you think is going to escalate to another level, you still want to document it because you need that information in the event that you do have to address it again. Step 5, follow up consistently. This is where your feedback fails, okay? Because you have refused to follow up. You want to acknowledge any improvement that they make and you want to do so immediately. And because that lets them know that you actually are paying attention and that it mattered in the first place. And if you notice that there is a regression, that they're falling back into their old habits, you want to address that as quickly as possible too. And don't just leave it to one conversation. Follow up like you said that you would. And let me add this caveat to this because we need to be aware that anytime we're dealing with providing people with feedback, especially if it's something that may be perceived as negative, this is what's going to help you. This framework that I just provided to you, but not everyone is going to be receptive to it. You might get pushback from certain employees, and you probably already know who they are, but it doesn't mean that you don't address it anyway. I had a colleague recently share with me that she had a team member who sent an email to a C suite executive, and the C suite executive was immediately offended because this was a passive aggressive email. So she sent the email to the leader. The leader read the email and recognized exactly what the C suite exec did, that this was passive aggressive and that it was inappropriate for that team member to send that email. This is a low level employee who sent it. But when she addressed it and she addressed it directly, he pushed back and basically said, no, that's not passive aggressive. I disagree, and was really unwilling to change his behavior. Well, it's not one of those things where you just immediately rush people out the door, but she recognizes at this point that this might have to be escalated. So be prepared in those instances, but recognize that if you have a process and a system in place, then you can go through your process and you can deal with it. And whatever deviations might occur along the way, well, at least you have a process in place as to how you're going to handle these types of things. And then you just continue to escalate it according to your organization's policies. So, then what kind of feedback implementation do we want over the next 30 days? Week 1, identify one behavior that you may need to address and prepare using the SBI format that I just outlined for you. Week number 2, deliver the feedback using the full framework. Week number 3, follow up to acknowledge progress or to address continued issues. Week number 4, repeat this with the next feedback opportunity. Okay, you want to build the habit. And this is dependent of course, upon the type of work and the level of employee, because an entry level employee is going to have a different skill set than that 15-year veteran on your team. But if you're interacting with them and you're providing them feedback and you're being direct and specific about that, it will be easier for you and it will be helpful to them. So, here, how can you recognize that you've been successful? Well, you'll actually see behavior changing. So, consider that a win. And here's another way: people can clearly articulate what they need to do differently after having a conversation with you. That's effective communication. And here's another one: your team will now see you as someone who helps them improve. You can take a victory lap on that one because that's gold. If you have a team that is working for you and they recognize that you are there to assist and help them to improve, yeah, you that is gold. And you get a gold star for that one. And so what is our executive summary? How do we summarize this? Bottom line is that feedback does not change behavior if it's not observable. And the only thing that you're doing at that point is you're just complaining. You're just blowing hot air. So be specific, focus on behavior, explain the impact, and be sure to follow up. What is our risk level for this? Well, I think that this is pretty high because leaders who can't give effective feedback, they can't build high performing teams. And that's really what it is that you want. You want a team that can take care of business without you micromanaging them, that is open to feedback, they're open to learning things, and they also need a leader who can do the same. So your decision timeline is this week. If there is feedback that you have been avoiding, prepare it using this framework. It will help you. And again, that's my goal. So the next episode is we're going to talk about the 5 signs that your workplace has gone toxic and what leaders can do about it. And we're going to get into some of the specifics as to some of the warning signs that you can spot that will help you to identify that before the culture collapses. I appreciate that you stuck it out with me and listening to today's podcast. And if this has been helpful, and I trust that it has, be sure to subscribe and share the episode. And don't forget to leave me a review. And as a reminder, be sure to click the link for the Crossroads Spotlight segment so that we can highlight some of your challenges and victories so that we could potentially share those on future episodes. Just think about this. Great feedback, it is a gift, but it's only a gift if it's clear enough to actually use. So make your next feedback conversation one that is important and one that counts. Until next time, be thoughtful, be wise, be strategic. And remember, crossroads reveal who you are, catalysts shape who you become. Every decision matters, so make it count. See you next week for your next executive brief.